That part too? That's what it really looks like. Like all of this area through here, we went around and was like, it is really hilly through here.
Good for kids.
That part.
Hmm? 1 2 1 2 1 2 5 4 5 4 3 2. Huh?
There's just a little delay. Sounds good.
So we're good?
Yep.
Hello, folks. Jordan, live here in Louisville, Kentucky. A little different part of Louisville. Nice hills and greenery, and it's really beautiful over here. I guess like 20 minutes out of downtown Louisville. I'll give it a minute or two for more people to come in, but we've been here yesterday and today covering the, I don't know what I say, the ongoing travesty that is lack of action and injustice after Breonna Taylor's murder. And we've literally been here for, a little over 24 hours, and we've already seen how hostile and, in my opinion, steeped in racism the police department is here. We saw that a couple hours ago when, before we were about to start an interview, the police came commando style. I mean, like, 6 police cars, 12 police, all to get the protesters to bring down a tent that they had in the middle of the square. So press the like button, share this live stream, get this out as far and wide as you can, so that we could get good numbers on this. Also, definitely drop some support. statuscoup.com/road trip. So I'm here with Chanel. And you've been, long before Breonna Taylor, you've been kind of fighting the fight here, Black Lives Matter, Louisville. And I just want to talk about, for you, tell the audience more about the dynamic here pre-Breonna Taylor with the police, the brutality, the racism, the poverty, bring people into, what you've been dealing with in Louisville here.
So like Louisville is that city that began the narrative about selling people down the river. This is where that comes from, and it's steeped in blood of our ancestors. So they have that agenda where it's the old boys club or whatever in the police force, and it's always been there. I'm a police brutality survivor, and police terrorism here has just been constant. A lot of our elders really went hard in the 68 riots that everybody likes to call that, but it was an uprising after one of them actually got beat up by the police. And we know that the Black Six began just the same way as like Black Lives Matter did, standing up for folks, but also calling attention to some other areas, housing, food justice, etc. And here we are in 2020. Around the same things, especially with coronavirus. A lot of those things came to head, and so we've really been having to hold not only the city accountable, but a lot of grass tops nonprofits who claim that they do work for the West End of Louisville, which is really steeped in poverty. We've seen a lot of racial banishment. That's a tactic for gentrification, and then just a grotesque amount of evictions. And now here we are with coronavirus evictions coming up, and we've already had several families reach out looking for housing and DV situations. So it's just been really hard. But something that has also been an unfortunate constant is the police terrorism against Black bodies and murdering them. So Breonna is everybody seeing what is actually taking place. And I mean, like, lo and behold, 2 weeks after she was murdered, a murder that they covered up with Kenny's shootout with the police. They kill another man outside of a hospital in the middle of a pandemic. Jesse Stringfield, it's like, what type of decency do you have if when you see a Black body, you just murder them? And then 2.5 weeks later, they shoot an 18-year-old boy who was nervous, getting interrogated for sitting in his car. And then a week later, we have David McAtee murdered by the police. So it's really interesting watching them trying to behave themselves, but other than that, they are really violating people's First Amendment rights. The terrorism that's taking place during the protests, just grotesque, like abuse. The first night we were out there on May 28th, they just shooting people as they run from, the police shooting at people with actual guns. It was just actually crazy to get hit with paintballs while you're running away from gunshots. It's really sick, really. But I think, like, for folks who aren't here, where we're just outstandingly, just proud of this community to keep on going, to like stand up. I mean, even for the young folks who are watching officers that have terrorized them, even the officers that terrorized me are still on the force, and that was 20 years ago. To just be out here and just standing up against them night after night, day after day, that really is the best part about this, because it shows that we're really not getting ready to stop. Mm-hmm. We're really tired of the system that exists, but the build is also really beautiful. So food apartheid, even with the coronavirus going on, we decided to start feeding our own folks. Feed the West became a thing and has grossed in over $1 million. We've been fortunate with our mutual aid fund as well as Louisville Community Bail Fund, the only community bail fund in Kentucky to actually fund a place for Feed the West, so that we can not only just employ people, but get people the food that they need and the resources that they need, so that they don't have to get out here and get caught up in the system, because it's a very tangled web. We also have been fortunate to get extra funds in for our housing, and it's just like, what happened this time? It's really been interesting to me, just the people who want to reach out to actually help get families housed and also fight the city against some of the rogue just displacement that has been happening to people. So we're really fortunate in that. We still have justiceforbreonna.org. That's our website, has our demands on there, and people are really working them. Getting a citizens review board is really popping off. The city is trying to hold that, but communities are demanding that take place in their neighborhoods and in their communities.
What would the citizen review board do?
We got the subpoena power that we needed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and independent investigation. So
Great.
That needs to go to the state so we can secure it, because we are heavily red, and they love reversing things on Louisville.
I'm sure Mitch McConnell is going to be all for that.
Ditch Mitch, fuck him. Can I say that?
Yeah, let it out.
Thank you.
You actually made some controversy a few years ago, I know,
yeah.
with Mr. McConnell.
Oh, yeah, actually it was last year, August 2019, at his home. They were saying he was resting, and Ditch Mitch is just a coalition of us trying to find out where he is and disrupt him. I didn't even know he was here today, because I would be right there. And I'm trying to see where he's going to be at. But yeah, so you're trying to rest. Well, we can't rest because you took Medicaid away. We can't rest because you're taking money up out of this state. And then they have to beg for it at the government level, but that doesn't reach the people. Eastern Kentucky is still very much entrenched in poverty. Kentucky boasts some of the top poverty locations in the country, and education is just bare minimum. I mean, we've had teacher sick-outs for 2 years in a row, sans this one. So it was nothing to go to his house and just fuck with him, because you've been fucking with us. And he continues to do that. So it's going to be interesting watching this race, because we're really not an Amy McGrath. She's a Democrat of the establishment, and that's just not who we are here in Kentucky. She got bought out, and so now we're watching money fly just the same way we watch Biden get bought out. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be interesting. The establishment is real thick here. But our other demands, I wanted to make sure we talk about that. We got the no knocks at the local level. That's working on at the state level. So people around the state have just been like, hey, what do we do? How do we throw
just
down?
So my audience knows, the no knocks she's talking about, the cops who shot Breonna Taylor 8 times, killed her, they had a no knock search warrant, which basically allows you to just go in commander style without even, telling the people you're going in, you're the police, giving them warning. So obviously people would be startled if people are intruding in their home.
Exactly.
So Louisville was successful in getting rid of the no-knock warrants.
Unanimously at that too. So that was awesome. We also have open and transparent investigations. If people don't understand, you're watching it take place right now with the withholding of information. So LMPD has not even given all the information to the Attorney General, Daniel Cameron, who he, the mayor, and the governor, any of those people could actually take action, on these officers, and they just choose not to, pending the investigation. Regardless of the investigation, the rogueness of the action should be something that you want to take action on. So it's showing people's true colors. We've demanded the mayor resign. We're just wanting people to pick that up, to just know, like, yeah, we're in a turbulent time, but like, he gotta go. And he's been sitting underneath like just some rogue situations that have been happening to black folks here. So of course, fire and take away their pensions. This is important. People who murder people should not have to get to eat off of that blood money that they are receiving. And that's exactly what police pensions are when they commit crimes like that.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because Breonna Taylor's lawyer and the family just added to the lawsuit, came out citing her murder was part of a wider effort to gentrify that block in the west side of Kentucky. They said that was basically the Louisville Police Department trying to get rid of a full block.
Yeah, so I'm not even for sure if there's a direct correlation. I feel them on that because, yes, racial banishment is really high in West End of West Louisville. They just completed eliminating residents out of one of the last projects, Beecher Terrace, and that project boasted some of the highest prison rates. I think 1 in 3 people in that project went to prison out of Louisville. It also contributed to the highest poverty rates in the country, 40203 zip code. Wow. So that neighborhood, Russell, has seen a lot, but that's a constant story here in Louisville. It sits right on the border of 9th Street, and that used to be the economic center for Black Louisville, being pushed out of downtown and having to create, businesses for themselves. And so in the 30s, they just bulldozed it so they can make way for like highways and stuff. And ever since then, we've not seen any economic investment into West Louisville, even though we have some of the top Fortune 500 companies that sit over there, including Brown and Foreman. Mm-hmm. So it's just been really interesting watching as these things unfold. Our BLM house is in Russell. We just happen to be there, which happens to be the home of May Street Kid, who also opened up this housing inquiry and creating the Kentucky Housing Authority. We've watched and listened to residents actually talk about how the police goes into homes, whether with a warrant or without a warrant, doing a lot of no-knocks and just taking them over. The fines that are built up on the houses in the West End, not going to housing, but going to management with the city, and just taking over a lot of the houses, or letting them sit and just be blighted by people who don't even live here. So that's the reason why we created our housing team, trying to purchase houses and give them away to residents who actually need them.
And can you kind of talk about, Breonna Taylor, she was killed in March.
Yeah.
She had no criminal record.
That part.
She was an EMT.
That part.
By all accounts, ambitious woman rising up in society. Mm-hmm. And they go in because they, for whatever reason, suspect she might have connections to a suspected drug dealer. But why was there the need to go into her house in the middle of the night, commando style, for a woman without a criminal record, when you could have handled it much differently? Then they lie on the police report saying no injury, no forced entry. And like you said, it seems like this investigation is just a dog and pony show so far.
Dog and pony show. They've done this to every family that's been murdered by the police. We are having families who are still needing information or even to hear from LMPD about their child being murdered by the police. If you're murdered by somebody else, you get that information. Like that takes place when a civilian on a civilian crime. But if the state murders your child, you don't hear a peep or anything up out of them. Shelby Gazaway exited a Kroger's and was murdered on site. Dewantes Mitchell was set up and ambushed by the police while on the phone, murdered on site. Demondre Jordan murdered on site. Corey Boykin leaving a building, murdered on site, and so many others within these years.
David McAtee was left in the street for 12 hours.
Like 13. So, and on that day, it was just really hectic because, You got families that are just wondering what is going on. This is happening, and it was just an intense day for us. And our question was, why was the National Guard even in the West End? Like, it didn't even make any sense for them to patrol. So you was getting ready to patrol our city to make sure that we were there. And people are talking about, oh, we don't want a police state. Well, if the National Guard was just going to patrol, why didn't they patrol Anchorage? You know, why didn't they patrol the Highlands? Or why didn't they patrol the Indian Hills, where a lot of the city influencers live? Like, patrol those areas. Let's make sure you're not protesting, because they know who it is they're looking for and who they want to target. And we're just looking at, like, this disdain, like a complete gross disdain over black bodies, period. And I think that's why this moment is a lot different than any other moments, because you are watching what took place during coronavirus, talking about essential workers, but then you put them on a hierarchy. So if you're a doctor, you're here, you're doing government officials. But if you work at Family Dollar, the grocery store, you're down here, and it's a lot of us. And it's a lot more down that way, and they were mostly black and brown. And so now there's this compassion around, like, you know, what is really taking place, and really understanding the racism. I think that's what people are seeing in the Breonna Taylor case, but that's what's fueling them to not even give a fuck, right? They don't give a fuck that they don't have to put all that information on an incident report, because they have that bargaining agreement that can support them to hire them in either this position, another position, or another police force. And so that's what we've been seeing. The police officers that attacked me are actually lieutenants with this police force. And 6 months later, after they attacked me, they went on to kill a man with his handcuffed behind his back 12 times.
And what did they do to you?
Oh, just toss me around on the ground, while looking for help, just anything that they want to. And it was like, you need to assault people just to get your message through. And that's a problem. If we're talking about violence, we have to include, and that's one of our number one demands. If we're talking about violence, we're talking about gun violence, we have to include police terrorism in that violence, because is ultimately like the key. They get funding based on the work that they do. The work that they do is to target black and brown bodies in this country. And so if we want that money to shift, if we want the investment into black lives, into brown communities, we have got to divest from one of the most money-making pieces of our government, and it is public safety underneath the police.
Mm-hmm. And can you kind of talk about, to me, you look at the George Floyd case, Ahmaud Arbery, all these things, there was video. With this, unfortunately, there wasn't video. Yeah. So when George Floyd's name exploded out into the air, rightly so, people were outraged, but Breonna's name maybe has kind of slipped under the radar a little bit compared to that.
Well, that's the reason Say Her Name exists, right? Because regardless if it's on video or not, we failed to realize that black, trans, women, girls do not get the same attention as anybody else. And we're watching it happen right now, right? Say his name, say their name. That's not a call to action. It's a call to action to say, hey, say her name, because you are willing to erase that black women are also brutalized by the state or white vigilantes. And this is a case in point. When it went down, we're just like, really? Y'all not even getting ready to say anything about the dead person who was in the home that you murdered? You know, they amplified that Kenny shot this police officer. Coronavirus hit and a lot of things got closed, but we were still, the family and friends were posting that everywhere, which is kind of like why we haven't really talked to local media, except for, you know, now we're going into 30 days, because they sent that to you all. And we watched them send that to you all as we gathered resources to get ready for this. And we watched them tag you over and over again and push justice for Bree Way over and over again. And people did nothing. And people just sat with it. It's because it's almost depressing to know people don't really care about those things in places where, you know, we're not New York, we're not Chicago, we're not Minneapolis, we're Louisville, Kentucky. We're in Kentucky, you know. We feel forgotten a lot of the times. Like, everybody should have been like enraged and pushing for Booker if we wanted real change to get McConnell out of office, and we just did not even do that. We were just like, oh, there's Amy, but that's the establishment. So it is really like,
who has not been out with protesters, who has barely talked to protesters.
Who is Amy? Is everybody's questions. Nobody knows who's Amy is, and she launched a campaign being a Trumpian Democrat. So that's what we're looking at, and really trying to like make sure that if she's going to try to get this seat, which, you know, she's going to have to answer to black and brown folks in this state. She cannot keep ignoring us. But back to like how it feels to be erased, Ahmaud Arbery's situation actually is what went viral. And the family was like, push this out. And it was a graphic that was like, hi, my name is Breonna Taylor. I was murdered on this day. I'm this, that, and the other, and my killers are still out there. And so that's what we did. We just pushed whatever the family gave us, and lo and behold, here we go, and everybody's paying attention now. What I would love for folks to do is to actually see those demands and be invested in how to make change. It's one thing to boast amplification. We have already way past amplification. We are in almost 2 months worth of protest where we need to be now. We need to be focused on how to get this work done. So if you're not in Louisville, if you're in a different city or state, find out how you can defund the police. If you are in Louisville, divest.org is a graphic as well as other work and how to get attention to those folks who are controlling those monies and where those monies go. We also have activities for not only just West Louisville, but all of Black Louisville for where that money can go. That's just in a sense reparations for the most part. If we're targeted, then we deserve those funds for our communities who have none. No entertainment, low school funding, etc. The other thing is open and transparent investigations. Check out if you can get information from your police force if they're being investigated, because most times they will not. And that's what we're looking at right now. They're just holding on to shit. They're holding on to all these different families' information that they need about their child, about their family member. And we just think that's completely gross.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, it seems to me we got here a couple hours ago. No, we got here yesterday, but we were about to do an interview, and the police rolled up to take down that tent, and I could see some of the white officers kind of smirking and enjoying it. Real quick, you kind of see that there's kind of a history here of the police officers just knowingly being racist. I mean, they seem to enjoy, a lot of them, intimidating Black protesters, frustrating Black protesters, basically getting into it with Black protesters, instead of, in some other areas of the country, you've seen police here and there trying to listen, you know, marching with protesters. What's the history here? Because we know Louisville history in terms of white supremacy, Confederacy. Have you seen any improvement in relations with the police during these protests?
Oh, absolutely not. They're still the most hateful jackasses that I know, and there are people who are like trying to join the police force to do better. But if you're trying to do better, then you would make sure that the police force fundamentally changes or disbands. Do we need police forces? No, we don't. We actually have put too much reliance in, oh, I can call somebody else to handle the conflict that I need with you in my community. So that's our call to action for our Black and brown communities, is community safety and defense, and really talking about what community safety actually looks like. Are we just interested in call-out culture with never ever, you know, actually attending to that person? Are we just interested in like, let me just call the police on you because I want to hurt you just as bad as I feel hurt? Are really thinking about like, I could send somebody to prison for lying about the things that I said. Amy Cooper is being charged now with falsely making a statement, and I think
she
like
was the Karen who called the cops on a Black man in Central Park. Yeah.
Right. And that's something that, like, you know, that's a fear for Black men, but also Black people to be falsely accused of anything. You get that at work, you get that on the streets, you get that just about anywhere. And people do not want to live in that type of situation, so they take other means to get that done. We've already been using community safety and defense in our own lives, but we'd love for the vast majority of people, particularly white people, who are simply comfortable with calling the police, to actually, you know what, y'all too, discuss what community safety and defense is for yourself, because what that looks like for us is totally different than what it looks like for you. We not only have to look out for the police, but we also have to look out for you because you feel comfortable in white supremacy, in white privilege. And that's just not the same that everybody else has. And that's racism. People ask what racism is every day. I mean, like, racism was built for white folks to advance in white supremacy. Most of these fucking officers ain't even from here. They're not from Louisville. They're not from the city. And even if they are from here, they may have grown up in a racist-ass household holding that type of narrative and then being able to push it in our community. So, like I said, folks are getting out there and they're protesting. They're seeing the officer who's kidnapped them, you know, detained them and taken them somewhere, or who's falsely put them into jail or prison. They're watching people who fuck with them over and over again. And we're looking at the charges that are applied to different protesters. We were arrested last Monday, and everybody who blocked that highway to put up the banner, we all got disorderly conduct in blocking the highway. We're also seeing people that are just on the streets getting like trying to create a riot. And that was another piece that was like filmed. I think that was almost 2.5 weeks ago, where people were just out on the streets, just, from the park. And they were like, get out of the streets. And people are clearly not on the streets. They're taking and attacking people, doing all type of bodily harm, and applied riot charges to them, which is a felony. Wanton endangerment if you fought back, as if it's not okay to defend your body, regardless of whoever you are. And then unlawful assembly or something like that. And for a few folks, there's also an article around one of the live streamers, Shay Woolfolk, who was talking about she got an extra charge applied to her that was different than another live streamer. So they've definitely been watching us, so they know who people are. I think for our action was a little bit different because you had some very much prominent organizers in the city, if not the nation, in that action taking place. And they were trying to be careful with it, but they still kidnapped us for hours where we weren't processed. We sat on a bridge for an hour and a half. We sat in the cage for over an hour, and that's just where they lock people up in their garage, just changed to a cage. And then once we got inside, there was no reason to do all of that because they were processing us like 4 at a time. Got everybody processed by 6-something, but none of us were able to leave until like 2 o'clock in the morning because the community who has made up a lot of these protests came out for support to demand to get us out. And they started with them as well and arrested a few. So it's been interesting. It's been it's been frustrating watching them actually do the things that they're doing and wondering where the accountability is going to come from. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why people are working so hard to get that citizen review board going. Thankful to the ACLU, who also has employed Couture Haran, who's a BLM member, who actually developed the entire scaffold and campaigned for no more no knocks. Being able to help us with this abuse that is taking place. So we've seen those lawsuits take place across the country, and we're probably going to see more of those as well.
And do you see any hope federally? I mean, I know a lot of the country thinks if we just get Trump out, the sun will rise finally. But the Democratic Party, I mean, a lot of this stuff has been happened under a black president,
you hear me?
Has happened under Democratic mayors.
Exactly.
We're being sold, restore the soul of the nation. I think Trump's terrible, but I don't necessarily think if Biden were president and Breonna Taylor were murdered, you'd be seeing federal leadership. I mean, Obama's Department of Justice sat on the Eric Garner investigation. They didn't charge the officer. What are you feeling, and what are the protesters here feeling in terms of the presidential election?
Jesus. That's a hard one too, right? So now we're grieving 2 processes where we could have been hopeful for some very progressive folks to happen. Louisville is not a progressive city. It's the most progressive city in Kentucky, but it's not a progressive city. It is ran by liberals, and those liberals are actually not very much in tune with the actual needs and desires of people who want to see that change. It's the same way for the nation, right? Like most of these things on the Democrats that sit in Congress right now are just liberals. They're just making sure that they're setting boundaries. It took Nancy Pelosi forever to be like, oh, we're not going to do impeachment. And you literally have the majority of the country like, oh, hell no, impeach that motherfucker. So it's the same way going into this election. There's no fucking hope that I have for this country right now underneath this presidency. I mean, he brought in Sessions that brought us here, reversing a lot of the statewide, giving states, the option to reverse some things, but then also add Blue Lives Matter bill that gives them the same, for your job, the same type of protections that we have for civil rights. Like, you think this shit's a joke? But I think not being angry at those things, and being angry now is being reactionary, and that's where we're at right now. If we weren't angry when they did the Blue Lives Matter bill, or if they did gang bills, which is what happened here, or if they do any other bills that highly incriminate people, and then we're angry when they murder somebody, we're being extremely reactionary. And I'm hoping that's what we learn what not to do, is like be able to organize, be able to be prepared, and then hopefully we can get more progressives into office. And I think it really does start with that invest divest, having that conversation around like what community safety and defense looks like. We are one of the most violent nations. I mean, we have the top military only because they can do some of the most violent things. And I don't think people see that in the same way. You know, we talk about video games, and I'm not talking about video games in that way. Please don't, because video games are fun. But when we talk about like being able to play those and being able to utilize those tools and stuff, that shit's real. They use that shit. They use that shit in a lot of countries that we don't see, that we're going to war with, and they do that all the time to protect a lot of our interests. So until we're able to be like to resource back here, or to actually resource for ourselves, we're going to continue to keep seeing this imperialism that's taking place. And now that it's taking place on us, I'm hoping that more white people actually get to start thinking about like, if we just move away from imperialist militarized police, then maybe other folks would be able to enjoy just living. Like, basically, that's just all what people want to do. I just want to raise my kids. Like, do I want to do this shit? Hell no. I'm doing it because it's been called onto my duty and my commitment to my people. And so this is why I do this shit. Am I successful? I'm great. I'm actually as shocked as anybody else that I'm successful at the shit that I do or that I go through. But I'm loving in this moment that there are young folks who are just being able to do the same thing and being able to build and being able to call this shit out. So I think that's what's more important about looking at November. Are we able to continue this all the way into November? Because we are no longer in the state that we were last year. We're no longer in the state that we were last November, and damn sure we weren't before March 13th. And I think these young people are going to carry us there. That's who's going to do it.
And lastly, it's been 115 days since she was murdered. What protests are continuing. So far, I mean, the Louisville City Council voted to increase the police budget, not decrease. So where did things go from here? I mean, do you think
we just keep fighting for it? I think people have got to understand that battles happen all the time. If like battles happen in your personal life, that's because of some of this shit. So what does it look like to build collectives and communes with folks so that we can get there? That's what we're getting ready to do tonight, is actually go through that. We've got petitions everywhere. I told you about the petition.
And what are those for?
Fire the cops. Underneath color change, bit.ly, fire the cops, capital F, T, and C. And we're trying to get to 15 million in conjunction with change.org and our justiceforbrianna.org page. And then from there, it's really deeply diving into the open transparency around police forces. There's some young folks in the coalition, Louisville Youth Coalition, who have been holding the mayor accountable. Really trying to get him to change that language. And that just lets them know that he doesn't care about them. They're asking you and demanding you to change the language around gun violence and include police violence, and you're not willing to do that. So you're enjoying spending that money that the police get for being police and policing people.
A lot of these mayors are very scared of the fraternal order of police.
Come on, and he's frightened. I talked to him on the first day because I was just like, look, I'm tired. What the fuck are you doing? We need to get something done, so that we were able to get those 3 demands. But it's also like just calling your attention to like, you're watching these kids that you've been ignoring. You watching these young folks, I don't want to be ageist. You're watching these young folks that you have totally just shitted on. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's been like where our resources go. It's a big ass hotel downtown. And they even call the restaurant neighborhood services. And we literally are sitting around blighted homes, food apartheids. I live in Shively, and there literally is no grocery store there that can serve like the vast majority of people. They took that away. So it's just been interesting. And we have a Walmart. But it's just been interesting watching him just really fuck up real bad. And his city influencers, they see it as well. So we're hoping that they take care of him. But a lot of people are demanding him to resign. So we're trying to push that as well.
And what are the odds of taking out Mitch McConnell with a Republican light who never shows up for protesters? I don't really know what she stands for. We also learned through an interview that in addition to cutting the polling places, 600,000 people, one polling place, a lot of people in the West End had no idea about that until Election Day. And also didn't even know they could get mail-in ballots. So there's also the voter suppression aspect of this. Because Booker, yeah, maybe he got in a little late, but that voter suppression, that was beyond suppression.
That part
was intentional.
That it was entirely intentional. And we were even asked by our Human Relations Commission to send in locations. And when you look at the map of, like, you know, folks that live in poverty, there were at least 20 other locations that could have been open that were safe for social distancing, traffic as well, because of increasing amount of people in those locations that they just didn't even consider. They were just like, no. So Michael Adams is also very much a target in the voting situation, this election coming up. So that's where we intend to make it extremely hard for him and Amy as we move into the November election. And I think we'll just stay on Amy's neck. You know what I'm saying? Like, we'll keep coming for her. If she really wants to take Mitch's position, or I don't know what you're right. Who knows what the hell she want to do. But she's going to have to prove herself. And if it takes like black Kentuckians to do that, because I'm hearing from people across the state about what it is that they need and what they want to do. And of course they hate Amy because we don't know her, and you just ran and won an election that is going to badly, you know, we're going to have Mitch still in office. And then I think, just thinking about this, I think if Mitch, I used to be a political organizer, I still do some, I'm with Black Women For as well. I think if Mitch does get reelected, that we will, because of this moment, see more people come for him to remove himself from that office. I don't think he really understands what has awakened in this moment, in this movement. And we're seeing like cross movements happening as we speak. We're in a global uprising for almost, 100, not 100 days, almost 2 months. So that's what I think is going to be the real kill turn for him.
What do you feel are the cross movements coming together?
Of course, the environmental movement. Like, you're looking at black folks living in some of the worst neighborhoods, illnesses that are caused by a lot of different factors. That's the West End. Our boundary is inundated by an entire place we call Rubber Town, and it's because of the name DuPont. But like, you know, just factories just line all up through there. So it's not, there's a few safe spaces you can venture out into the river, but like, why? We're also looking at like high particulate situations, the droplets that come out the sky on the people. But we're seeing Sunrise also back a lot of black candidates, also because of those situations. So thankful for Flint raising that up, and then other places being like, hey, we got Flint situations too with water. I'm seeing a lot of the reproductive justice movement, which I work for Sister Song, but people actually saying reproductive justice before they're saying reproductive rights, because people have to know that there is an injustice and allow those folks who are being injustice by whatever to actually join. And a lot of it is just a low access to a lot of different places. I almost thought that was the rain. I was like, that was quick.
We'll wrap up because it is going to downpour, but I thank you, Chanel, one of the leaders here in Louisville, Black Lives Matter. And yeah, the protests aren't ending, and protesters are not. I think a lot of times the government, the police, corporate America say, we'll wait them out. Let them protest for a few weeks.
Right.
They'll get tired. I don't think they're getting tired. I think
they've awakened like some people that have not normally been out there. This is the folks that people have been adjudicated on the street by law enforcement, not even the court system. We're just talking about the police. So those people are awake. Those people are yelling Black Lives Matter. Those people are saying no justice, no peace. They're not only calling for themselves, they're calling for justice for a lot of different things. And it's their time, and it's ready.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And we'll be live again probably later, because if it's Louisville, there seems to be a protest every night. So we're going to try to go live from a protest. Definitely keep supporting us. This road trip, statuscoup.com/road trip. It's like Christmas every time we see a donation. We need it. It's not cheap, as I'm sure you know. It ain't cheap going around the country doing actual, in-depth, independent reporting. We're not the local media, so we don't just regurgitate whatever bullshit the police tell us. That's called a press release, and that's why the police are allowed basically to do whatever the hell they want, because the media generally writes whatever the police tell them as fact. So please, please, please support us so we can keep getting voices like Chanel and the other folks we've spoken to so far. Get them out there. CNN's not going to speak with them. New York Times ain't doing profiles on Chanel, but this is how you get truth and awareness out. Check out our page. We got photos up from this trip, statuscoup.com/road trip. And yeah, check us back later. If you're not on our list, so you'll get a text message when we're live next, text us. COUP, you text COUP to 370-370. Bye-bye.